There is a significant development in the fight against climate change within the Muslim community. Today, Islamic Relief, a faith-inspired humanitarian agency, is spearheading the UK's first Muslim Climate Action Week this November. This landmark event will see communities, schools, charities and mosques across the nation unite to champion climate action. Islamic Relief's Campaigns and Public Affairs Coordinator said that Muslims are compelled to act, not only because of their faith, but also because many of the countries most affected by climate change, such as Pakistan, Bangladesh and Indonesia, are predominantly Muslim.
The climate crisis, the climate change is really having a sort of a very bad impact on all of us, and it's increasing, it's getting worse. And in view of this, we're launching Muslim Climate Action Week to sort of mobilise the community in the UK to raise awareness more about the challenges that we're facing and how we can sort of do everything we can to tackle climate change.
At Islamic Relief, as part of this week, we are hosting a huge range of events, something hopefully for everyone, where we are touching on panel events. We're doing with lots of climate activist campaigners are coming to think about Islam and the climate and nature and how we can be doing more. We're also inviting Muslims to get involved in hikes and guided walks and cycle rides, again to deepen that connection with nature and the environment. And we also have a great visit to the UK's first ever halal and tayyib farm, Willowbrook Farm, later this week. So we have a huge range of different events and different ways for the community to understand what we're talking about and then to inspire them to take more action. Beyond Islamic Relief, we also have several thousands of people from the UK to get involved. We have masjids, we have scouts groups, we have Islamic schools and madrasas taking action and talking as part of the campaign week. And so this is just a really great first step for us to mobilise the Muslim community, as Junaid said, to take further action. That is of the Islam and the Muslim element of it is a really big part, but the other side of it is that at Islamic Relief we really recognise that climate is there is an injustice angle to climate change here, and that we know that the negative impacts of climate change aren't felt by everyone equally. The poorest and the most vulnerable are the ones that are paying the harshest price, and in many of those cases it's the communities in the global south who are bearing that the brunt of that. We know that 80% of Muslims live in the global south, so countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Somalia, all of those countries are the ones that are really at the sharpest end of the crisis here. And so we really want to highlight that there are lots of layers for the reasons why Muslims should feel compelled to act, not only from a faith perspective, but also because lots of Muslims are themselves actually on the front lines globally. And so I just want to wrap up by saying that although we know that climate disasters are here, and that we can see what they manifest like, we at Islamic Relief feel confident that if we act collectively and if we act now, it's not too late, and that we hope that Muslims will, as part of this week, feel inspired and feel compelled to take action over a longer period of time.
The climate crisis is not just an environmental crisis, it's actually a humanitarian crisis that affects everyone globally. And I'd like to draw your attention just to some of the countries that Soraya has mentioned today, which is Pakistan, Bangladesh, and countries like Sudan, for example. And I think more straight to to Europe context, Spain. I mean, you've seen more than 150 or more than 200 lives have been lost in Spain as a result of the ensuing effects of climate change, which was fast rainfall and sudden downpours. But I think one of the things is that Muslim populations are on the forefront of all climate crisis. I mean, we've already mentioned that, and I just want to remind everyone that the climate crisis cannot wait. This is something that we need to act on, straight away. And these are not distant threats. These are threats that land on our doorstep, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in Spain, whether it's in Pakistan, whether it's in Bangladesh, whether it's in Indonesia or Sudan. These are real people, these are real communities who are suffering. For example, when I went to the Sindh region, I saw real families being torn apart as a result of this. Their homes were washed away. Flood waters came throughout their homes, and they had nowhere to turn. These are not devastating stories. These are the lives of 33 million people were affected in places like Pakistan, for example. They devastated crops. So you're talking about people's livelihoods, you're talking about people's food, the displaced families across the country. So for example, people from Sindh had to go into other areas. These are communities that had limited resources anyway, and now they're suffering even more. So we're already talking about the fight against poverty, but climate change is another added layer to that fight against poverty. And these are not abstract concepts, these are the stark realities that face and that the very existence of people it affects. And one of the things that we're doing, particularly around Muslim Climate Action Week, I think these are the things that we want to advocate on, and we want to be able to tell people about the compassion that we have in our faith and the urgency that is needed around the climate crisis. So it is to protect our planet, and it is to support the very people who are the most vulnerable amongst us.
Do you think the Muslim came too late within talking about climate change, environment and all of that? And why?
Well, I think environmentalism within the Islamic framework has existed for over 1400 years. I think part of the conversation as these new generations are around is the activism around climate change. We've been late to talking about climate change from a Muslim perspective because of the moral argument around the fact that we have to do something about this planet, because firstly, God asks us to do things around the planet, but secondly, the environmental narrative around who we are as a people is affecting many of us around the world. At least 80% of the people around the world sit in climate vulnerable nations.
So what is the action plan of Islamic Relief in regards of the climate change worldwide?
So for us, there's always an action plan. Islamic Relief has pushed around its 10-year strategy, and we are now looking at a further 3-year strategy around climate change, and particularly advocating for nations who we work with on this within this space. For example, we work in 40 countries worldwide. Each one of those countries worldwide has a national action plan. Each government has a national action plan, and what we say contributes to the NDCs, which is the National Determined Contributions, which are part of the Paris Agreement, which took place in 2015. So for us, each one of our countries that we operate in has a climate change plan. And for us, it's about tackling the very root causes of why do we have to deal with a humanitarian issue in terms of glaciers melting, like in Pakistan. That is understanding the root causes. The glaciers will melt, this area will flood. What can we do to be able to mitigate the stampede of 33 million people going from one area to another? So we are talking about vast spaces of displacement, and when people are displaced, they will move from country to country, to space. So who will look after those people? So what we're trying to do is say, can we adapt to the situation, or can we mitigate a situation? And what we're trying to do is ensure that these things don't happen in the first place, by ensuring that the spaces that people live in are well looked after, well cared for, and also that the communities themselves know how to adapt to those situations.
So Muslim Climate Action Week, today is the first day of the campaign week. It's an awareness raising campaign looking to really highlight the relationship between Islam, the environment, the nature, and how we as Muslims have a huge responsibility to act, to take action, to be talking about the climate crisis and be part of these climate conversations. So for us at Islamic Relief, we recognise that Islam, obviously we are a faith-based charity. Islam is a driving motivation and a factor for us in all of our work. And with climate, we know that there is lots of frameworks in Islam, lots of principles that we can take and learn from. And so for us, it was a really conscious decision to use those frameworks to drive our climate work. And also at the same time, we work in lots of climate vulnerable countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Somalia, where Muslims are on the front lines. And so it was really important for us to take both of those sides and think about how we need to be talking more about this, because our communities are the ones facing the crisis disproportionately.